Mirasee.
Is the myth that we can keep pushing, but we can see that also in the school system, why after 7 hours or 8 hours of classes, there is so much homework to do in most schools afterwards. Doesn't make sense that we keep demanding and putting that expectations from students to workforce.
Hi, I'm Dr. Irena O'Brien, and you're listening to Neuroscience of Coaching. I'm a cognitive neuroscientist with almost 30 years of study and practice in psychology and neuroscience. And as the founder of the Neuroscience School, I teach coaches and other wellness professionals real-world, evidence-based strategies to use in their practices. In each episode, I invite a seasoned coach to discuss a topic that affects our field. And together, we provide you with science-based tools to help your clients reach their goals by working with their brains to create results that last. Today, we're going to talk about burnout. I certainly don't need to explain what it is, but what does neuroscience have to say about it? Does it have a physiological basis in the brain? In scientific terms, we call it burnout syndrome, since it's not technically a medical condition. The World Health Organization calls it an occupational phenomenon and defines it in terms of being work-related. However, that doesn't exclude personal factors that may contribute to burnout, and usually do. The most obvious examples are relationship problems, financial challenges, and domestic strife. Although burnout is not considered a medical condition, diagnosing and treating it does require identifying underlying or co-occurring conditions that may be unrelated or contributing. Some of these include depression, insomnia, and metabolic disorders. It's necessary to parse out exactly what's going on before jumping right into a protocol to address burnout. At the heart of it, burnout comes from an inadequate coping response to chronic work-related stress. This can occur because the person isn't recognizing or acknowledging the symptoms, or they're downplaying or denying them, or they don't have the necessary coping skills. That said, it's also important to mention that burnout is not a cause for shame or feelings that something is wrong with you. Because all of us have finite amounts of physical and mental energy, we are all susceptible to exhausting them at some point or another. The goal then is to become more aware of our own limits, recognize when we're approaching them, and have resources available to adjust accordingly. As for the neuroscience of burnout, it is evident in numerous ways. First, we see dysfunction in the neuroendocrine stress network. Second, we see the chronic stress release of adrenaline increasing activity in the amygdala, which further dysregulates the stress network. Third, the amygdala doesn't regulate the HPA axis as it should, which throws off our neuroendocrine network's ability to regulate our mood, sleep, cognition, energy, and more. And last, we can see literal structural changes to gray matter in the brain, as well as harmful inflammatory responses throughout the body. So when we experience burnout and feel like we're totally out of whack, that really is an accurate reflection of what's going on physiologically in our brain and body. But the good news is, just as neuroscience can offer us insights into the problem, it can offer us ways to get out of it. And more importantly, it can offer ways to prevent burnout the next time we're headed for it. For this and much more, let's bring in my guest today and dive into the conversation. Dr. Ana Melikian is a speaker, top 1% podcaster, and the author of Mindset Zone, Actualize Your Human Potential, a #1 Amazon bestseller in organizational learning. Ana earned a PhD and 2 masters in psychology, laying a solid foundation for her work integrating research data with practical applications. She's also a cancer survivor, embodying resilience and inspiring change through self-leadership. Ana's work is at the forefront of navigating the human side of the AI disruption. She aims to harness the power of artificial intelligence to leverage our human potential, ensuring that technological advancements enhance, not diminish, our humanity and collective well-being. She strongly believes we can have impact without burnout. Ana, thank you very much for joining me today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Tell us a little more about your journey and how that made you especially interested to talk about burnout.
I think in our society nowadays here, I'm originally from Portugal in Europe, but I live here in the United States for now 21 years. We are conditioned to pushing, try hard. So it's not difficult that as the years go by, we face some burnout situations in our lives. So I think most people, it's one of the reasons why the word burnout is so often used nowadays. It's because it's a common experience. And at the same time, doesn't need to be. We can do things to prevent burnout. So the reason why this has become a topic of interest for me, yes, has to do with my personal journey and seeing others from my clients to the workforce in general struggling with it.
Yeah, I see that with my own students. So one of the things that I teach is that we really only have enough energy to put in hard cognitive work for about 4 to 6 hours a day. Anything above that is just work that's not hard cognitive work, and yet people think that they can just keep on going at full steam and they're not going to get tired, but their brain gets tired.
Is absolutely true, but is the myth that we can keep pushing. And you're speaking about your students that I presume are adults, but we can see that also in the school system. Why after 7 hours or 8 hours of classes, there is so much homework to do in most schools afterwards? I think from a psychological perspective, that is my background, and for a neuropsychological perspective, that is your expertise, doesn't make sense. But we keep demanding and putting that expectations from students to workforce.
Yeah. So we're training them starting at an early age.
Absolutely. And we are seeing kids getting burnout, something that I think was not as frequent before. I base a lot of my work on burnout prevention because that is really where my work lies. I'm about preventing the full burnout weapon, because when the people are really in full burnout in the workforce, usually is a turnover, is they are out of the door, so to speak, one way or the other, by their will, by illness, by circumstances. Things arrive to a point that they have to, okay, I cannot deal with this anymore, and they have to have that break to recover. That, like you were saying in the introduction, can bring other underlying situations in, or sometimes can get the accumulation effect of personal stuff and things in people's life that really is like the last drop in the bucket, and then people have to deal with all the situations. But it takes a long time to recover from full burnout. So my big thing is, let's prevent it as much as possible, recognizing the light side of burnout, because it's where we can do something. We have more agency to do something about. But the society and the school system is really pushing from early age. And it's interesting to see, like I was saying, that I base a lot of this work in a body of research led by Christina Maslach and her team. And she has some of the instruments that the burnout surveys that are more considered like the gold standard for burnout research. And the very interesting thing is that they have scales that are adapted to some populations. Of course, the initial population that was adapted to was the healthcare for doctors and nurses. It's not difficult to imagine why. Then they have the general scale, but they have now a scale for students too, and that is saying something.
Okay, thank you for that. I want to go back to our obsession with overwork just for 1 minute. So you must have heard of the 10,000 hour rule, right?
Yes.
So there's more to that story than 10,000 hours, right? You probably know that. It was 10,000 hours over 10 years at the rate of 4 hours per day of deliberate practice, 4 hours a day. But these students also slept 8 hours a night. They took naps in the afternoon, and they also spent about 3 to 4 hours in leisure activities that were kind of related to what they were doing, but it was not hard cognitive work. So they did not overwork at 4 hours a day, and they became accomplished.
Absolutely. And I think one of the key words is the practice is deliberate, is intentional. It's not just doing by the sake of doing it. It's not pushing by the sake of pushing that we do a lot in the workforce. And I think this is even more relevant nowadays with the emergence of the AI disruption, with all the technological advances that we are having, that we see this in society and in the workforce. The push to do more is 10x your productivity. Now you can do more than before. Everything is about quantity. And I think the emphasis will be in quality. How can we take, for instance, advantage of the AI technology to do better rather than do just more?
Do you think that's primarily an American or a North American problem?
If originally maybe, but now it's spread all over the world. No, but it's not just United States. I will say, if we look by what I can see in literature, Asia countries have this issue for a long time of the burnout. They even have words to describe that by overworking, something that we don't have in the English language. So it's not something just of the United States of America. Other cultures have that. I think in Europe we have some buffers that we are losing it a little bit in the workforce, like the separation of work life and family life, the sacredness of the weekends, of the holidays, that now I see in some organizations with the mobile devices, the demands of being always plugged in. But at the same time, because of the culture there are more rules and regulations to preserve some kind of boundaries that unfortunately we don't have here in North America.
Yeah. So I want to jump right onto one of the biggest challenges of burnout, having no energy. And without the energy to do something, it can feel hopeless. So what do you see as the key to getting around this conundrum?
First, let me give a step backwards here of a big picture and context, because like you define in the beginning, burnout is this condition, not a disease, not a mental illness, but is this condition that is being recognized even by the World Health Organization. I think it was in 2019 that they came up with the definition that is one of the more prevalent definitions of burnout, that speaks about 3 dimensions of burnout. There is the level that you are referring with your questions, that is the energy depletion, the exhaustion. But there is also another dimension that is the disconnection. We lose the sense of purpose. So there is people, let's think about a doctor or a nurse that went to their profession with a mission, and after years and years of working, they get in a state that they don't see the meaning of what they are doing, and they become cynical about their work. I know nurses that became real estate agents because they could not deal with the pressures of their profession anymore. They disconnect from their meaning. So there is that a second dimension there. And then there is a third dimension that is a lack of sense of efficiency. The work that we do doesn't seem to make any difference and move anything, even in terms of the sense of this, I'm doing something. So most of the scales and the assessment tools out there, including the Maslow's Burnout Toolkit, assess these dimensions. So we always have to look to burnout at least with the dimension of the energy, if the person is exhausted, and the dimension of cynicism, of disconnection, the personalization, that are different terms that are used. So if we look, I like when I explain the results of these measurement tools that we have to a group of people, I like to present this in a matrix, like 4 quadrants. So if we consider one of the dimensions, the energy, like the vertical line, we have at the bottom of that line exhaustion. We are depleted of energy physically and emotionally. So what is in the other side of that dimension? If one side is depletion, exhaustion. The other side, I will argue that is the flow of optimal performance. So feeling energized. And then if we introduce a horizontal dimension that breaks the vertical line in the middle, and I like to call that dimension connection. If we are connect with our values, with our purpose, we have the good stuff. But if we are in the other side of it, is the cynicism. We don't see a meaning in what we are doing. And then we have like 4 quadrants there. So in the lower left quadrant, that is where the cynicism is at the most and the exhaustion, that is the full burnout. But in the other side, in the top right quadrant, where we are in the flow of optimal performance and connected with our purpose and values, that is where we are fully engaged and we can have magical results if we do it in a strategical way. And we still have 2 other quadrants, the one below the engage and next to the burnout, so in the lower right. So we are still on purpose, but low in energy. So with exhaustion, that is overextended, where so many coaches, consultants are, and many leaders in organizations. They are still connected with their purpose, and they think that that creates immunity against burnout, that they are tired. They wake up tired, and that is a problem. They are not making their biggest impact in the world. And I like to describe them as the frog in the pot of boiling water. The temperature is rising 1 degree at a time, and they just say, oh, it's part of the job. It's just a phase. And they keep going, pushing, and you know better than many what that creates in a neuropsychological level. And it's just a question of time. They start to dip their toes on the burnout side, and they stay a little bit, they recover, they maybe sleep more in the weekends, but they keep in the same conditions, in the same pot of boiling water. So it's just a question of time. Then one day, and then another, and another, they start to become cynical about their purpose, and they can fall into full burnout. And just to end the quadrants, the remaining one, that is the top left, where people are disconnected from the purpose, but they still have energy. We call it is the disengaged quadrant. And we see this a lot in the workforce. Our people, they are doing their job description, but not doing the extra mile. Because why? They don't feel a purpose or a meaning on that. And that in a workforce, in a team, can lead to more work for people that are overextended and create a bad dynamic. The goal is how can we bring more people to that engaged quadrant? That is where the magic happens, where we can do intentional work that really creates a positive impact minus the burnout.
Well, that was fascinating, Ana. So what happens first? Is it the energy drain that happens first and then the disconnection from purpose?
I think it depends of the people. If we are speaking about coaches, that I think is a lot of your audience. Coaches and leaders, I think absolutely by my experience, that is the thing. They are overextending themselves. They have more in their plate that is humanly possible to deal with, that they keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And in that sense, and they also, because of their own history, they are very connected with their values, with their purpose, with their mission. So that flame that keeps pumping them and is beautiful, but they are asking too much from it. So they feel first the exhaustion, and then when they are so tired that they really cannot see the flame inside is where the full burnout happens.
So it must be the same then with medical professions.
Yes.
Right, like doctors who have a really strong sense of purpose.
Yes, mainly. And in the doctors, there is a little bit of a mix, I think, because there are doctors that went to the profession because of the sense of mission and the purpose. But there were others that were pressured to go to as for a medical school, not from the same dynamic, but the sense of obligation, and that is the best profession. So that the dynamic can be a little bit different.
So how do you help people overcome burnout?
Like I said, If they are really burnout, there are other experts out there that specializes in burnout recovery. My expertise are not there, is how to help them when they are overextended. That is my sweet spot. Prevent the full burnout. And that's one of the big things is what you are touching in many ways in our conversation. Help them to realize, to have their insight that work doesn't lead to the more impactful results. When they realize that if they want to actualize their potential, making a big difference out there, the best way of doing it is being strategical, leveraging their energy. Then they learn how to be more in the engaged quadrant, in the engaged zone. That is really where optimal performance happens.
So this reminds me of a guest that I had on a while ago, Anka Herman. You might know her.
Yes.
So when she has clients who push and don't seem to get anywhere, she tells them to go take a break, go to the beach, go take a walk, have a good night's sleep, and then come back.
Yeah, absolutely. When I wrote my book, The Mindset Zone, that you referred to in the introduction, and what is the tool that I can give people that they can use immediately, that they can remember? And I'm a speaker, so I was speaking about it, and I was wanting to find something that was easy for people to remember. And that was like something that they could use in whatever self-development, self-leadership program they will do. So I look around, I look to my work, I look to research, and I come up with this framework that I call the PIE method. And PIE stands for P-I-E. Who doesn't like a nice slice of pie? So I thought that was a delicious acronym. And the PIE, 3 things. Keep it simple, 3 things. And the PIE stands for pause. We need to learn how to pause. That is one of the secrets of any program of self-development, creating moments that we create that container for pressing the pause button that allow us to see the space between a stimulus and the response and allow us to choose our response. And probably you are aware of the beautiful quote, between a stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is the power of choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That is one of the secrets of most programs of self-development. But the challenge is how to see that space between the stimulus and the response. If we don't create that, if we don't know how to slow time to see that, we are just reacting and not creating, not choosing truly a response. And I argue that creating that pause is essential. And when I speak about this, I tell that there are 3 types of pauses. Macro pauses, like working with a coach, going to a retreat. It's a big time that we take to press the pause button and to reconsider things, and it's so important and transformational. But if we go out of that retreat of working with a coach and we keep doing the same day in and day out, working, not having time to press the pause button, that changes are not going to be lasting. So we need to have scheduled pauses in our day-to-day. Moments that we press the pause button because it's in our schedule, and we stop and we give ourselves time. Because that is like going to a mental gym, that we are getting mentally fit, and that is what allows us to be ready to the 3rd type of pauses that I like to call the micro pauses. That is that millisecond between something that triggers us, that we can identify, that we can see the space, that we can press the pause button and choose a different response that we have done in the past. Then is when the magic can start to happen, but we have to increase our mental fitness for that to happen. And that takes us to the I of increase, that is for increasing self-awareness. So the P of the PIE method is for the pause. The I is for increasing self-awareness, because it's what we do with the pause. One of the more magical things that we can do with that container is becoming more self-aware. Increase our self-awareness of our thoughts, of our feelings, and of our actions. And I like to always say, see them as 3 sides of a triangle. because if we see them in a linear way, it's very easy to try to always focus on the thinking. That is very powerful. Changing our mindsets can change the way we feel and what we do. Absolutely. But I like to see them as a triangle. One side is our thoughts, the other side our feelings, the other side your actions or behaviors. If we lose one of these sides, we don't have a triangle anymore. And we need the three sides. So when you are saying about going, if we are running in circles, not going anywhere, banging our head against the wall, the best thing sometimes is just going a walk in nature, taking a shower. Do something that will change the way you think and the way you feel about it. And then, so we have the pause that creates the container to the I to increase the self-awareness. Then we are ready for the E that is embracing the experimentation mindset. And I like to use the word experimentation because in research, when we create a protocol, when we create an experiment, we have the expectation of a certain result. But the big breakthrough happens in science when we get something different than we were expecting, that we have then to come with other experiments to learn why. So there is no bad results. Really, it's just more information to learn from. And that, I think, is the best reframing that we can do to when we try things. And then, let's say, we do mindfulness for a couple of days and then we forget to do it the next day. If we just give up, because, I forgot, this doesn't work. We are not taking the full potential of it. But if we take as an experiment and then ask why I did in the first and then second day and didn't did it in the third day, then we have more information to learn from.
That was just super interesting. Thank you. I'm just learning so much from you. So what about hobbies?
Hobbies, I think, is one of the secret ingredients or secret sauces that we don't put enough emphasis on.
I think so too. And I teach that to my students.
Because it's creating that something that people like to do, that takes them for their usual things and allow them to see the world from a different perspective. So having hobbies, and hobbies can be walking in nature, can be even seeing a series. How do you say, if you like TV or movies, your hobby can be going to the movies. There is no rules of what your hobby is, but it's something that take you from the work, and allow you to breathe, allow you to change a little bit your role, that can offer amazing perspectives and allow you to be better in whatever you do professionally.
Yeah, unfortunately, my students say that their leaders that they coach say they just don't have time for hobbies.
One of the little tools that I use a lot to the pause is the breathing. Because breathing, you know how powerful can be for our brain, for our mindsets, for everything. And there are breathing exercises that takes less than a minute to do. And yes, leaders, professionals many times say, but I do not have time. And I stop them. You don't have time to breathe? You understand the irony of what you are saying? You are living. You have to breathe. Can you breathe in a conscious way for 1 minute? If you don't have time to do that, are you really living, or what are you doing with your life?
Yeah, I teach that too, like heart rate variability. Yeah.
That we can control through our breathing. Our breathing is this amazing thing. Okay, yes, if we are here speaking, if somebody is listening to our conversation, they are alive, they are breathing by default. But they can be breathing very badly in the sense of the physiology of our breathing. If they are breathing in a very shallow way, possibly they are in a state of stress.
They're in the sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah, exactly. So that is important to have that state, and our nervous system has that state, because if it's to run out of a lion, if it's to get out of a car that is coming fast, we need to have the capacities to switch to the sympathetic system very quickly, and it's powerful. But if we are all day on that state, our health, mental and physically, takes the toll, because in nature we are made to compensate the sympathetic with the parasympathetic, that is relax and recover, and means breathing in a deeper and fullest way that allow us to rest and recover. But if we don't balance it, we will pay the price. And burnout is one of the prices that we pay.
Yeah, we really should be aiming to live mostly in the parasympathetic nervous system. And then we exit that system into the sympathetic when we need to, right? Well, when we need that stress response. But most people now just live all the time in the sympathetic nervous system. Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know if you remember the Energizer bunny of the commercial, the rabbit, the pink rabbit with the little drum. Keep going, 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 going. That drum. I was like that. Like outlasting everybody else. And I was so proud of it that I had the capacity of keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And other people, oh, I'm so tired. And I keep going and going and going. And that is what society rewards. But that is having the sympathetic activate all the time. And there is a big price to pay for it. I think we need to be more like cats. If you have a cat or observe a cat, they can be very active when they want and need, and they can relax and recover, and they know how to chill a lot.
Yeah. So how would you personally describe burnout in your own experience? Like you did say that you had suffered from a burnout. So what are your coping strategies when you see it coming?
So let me share a little bit. For me, sometimes I consider myself a lifelong learner and I love learning, but sometimes I have to knock my head against the wall in big, big ways to learn some important lessons. So I was always, like I was describing before, like that little rabbit of the Energizer commercial. That was like my medal of honor. And now I'm successful and all of that. I'm not sleeping very well at night. I'm only sleeping 5 hours, but I have a successful online business. And I was so proud of it. Until in my case, the big wake-up call was a cancer diagnosis. That I don't recommend to be the wake-up call for anybody. We can learn from others. We have this capacity of vicarious learning, so I really advise people to use that capacity that we are wired to.
Your body will let you know.
Yep, and in my case was cancer that made me rethink my priorities in a big way and put priority to my health. And really during the journey of healing, learning that I really could do the same or even more, creating a bigger impact out there, working less hours. I had heard about it, but didn't believe it really. And when the circumstances made that was the only option, because I had very limited energy during the cancer treatment. So what was the thing that I could be doing that is still connected with my meaning? And then I realized that if I was leveraging the right tools and doing it in the right way and prioritizing, I could make a bigger impact, working less hours and enjoying life more. And that was transformational.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Anna. Yes, I think this past summer and fall, did I suffer from burnout? Maybe, but I was very highly stressed and it was due to some external circumstances. And I was on a call with my alumni students, and I usually present something, some kind of piece of research or something that they would find interesting. So I prepared it, and I went through my presentation, and then we do a Q&A and a discussion. So they started asking me questions, and my mind went blank. So that's one of the symptoms, too, or the consequences of burnout, right? Is it affects your cognition, it affects your memory. I was shocked. I was truly shocked. And I had just done the presentation. I could not answer a question.
Yep, and recognizing that is important. And also understanding that the burnout is the symptom of something. This is another thing from the work of Christina Maslach. We have to see the burnout as the canary in the coal mine. So remember, and that is the frog in the pot of boiling water is a myth. There is not really that experiment. That is true that in the old times, they used to take canaries in a little container down in the mine because they are more sensitive to the fumes. And when they were start not to singing or not behaving normally, they knew that there was something going on. So they brought the canary out. And everybody that was in the mine out until they clear the fumes. And the canary, when he's not feeling well, is the person feeling the burnout. But mainly when we are speaking in the workforce, there are other conditions, systemic conditions that are fueling the burnout to happen. And what I cannot understand how companies keep doing, and us individually sometimes doing to ourselves, is going back to the mine without clearing the fumes, without clearing the conditions that are creating the burnout. And then expect that that there is not more people getting burnout, or if you are not going back in that cycle of burnout. And the classical conditions that can create burnout, we know them from research. Of course, in many cases, it's workload. We absolutely have more in our plate that is humanly possible for being done by ourselves. Then there is also the sense of lack of control. As humans, we love to be in control. So situations, mainly when we are working for somebody else or even to ourselves, but things that we feel out of control also drain our energy and create burnout conditions. Unfairness in the reward system, lack of sense of community, lack of fairness, things don't look fair, just that also fuels burnout, and not being in alignment with our values. So all those things are important to understand if we really want to prevent and avoid burnout in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that, Anna. These are all things I believe in too. I think it's incumbent upon employers to really watch out for potential burnout and create the conditions, right? And these are not extraordinary conditions. This is just basic humanity.
Absolutely. And I know that you say that you coach leaders, and I'm familiar because I also coach leaders, and many of them. But we are in a launch. We are in this big project. We have to put all hands on deck, and we really have to push hard. And I give them that. Okay, yes, there are moments that we really have to get all hands on deck and we really have to push hard. But it has to be a sprint. And then there has to be a moment to recover. It's like if you think about sports and football as an example. Professional athletes, they put everything on the field when they go out, mainly when we arrive now to something like the playoffs. After the playoffs, what happens? They take time out to recover. And there is lots of economical pressure. If it was possible, physically possible, to keep them playing all year long, they will be playing all year long. But even the people that do more money than the football players know that for the machine to keep producing money, they have to let them rest and have the off season. Why don't we allow that in the corporate world? Why has to be always on? And going back to sports as an analogy, then we get more like in sports that they really don't have off times, that are the performance sports. And the career is a very short career because we only can give so much. And if we don't have the recover and restore, we pay the price.
Yep. Do you have a standout client success story related to burnout? Maybe someone who was really bad off and fully turned it around.
I like to consider myself that success story. But I love when I work, and even myself, I have to keep reminding myself, and this goes to your field of expertise of neuroscience. It's so easy to go back to our old patterns because they are so ingrained in our brain. So yes, I work with people that they come a little bit overextended, and by working together, we manage to create more strategical, more leverage ways. And I'm thinking about the specific case of a client that I'm working at the moment, that she did the hard work and now she's really collecting the fruits of her labor and enjoying. And I know that if she doesn't keep aware of the systemic forces, aware of her own inner dynamic, she will in the future get in a situation of potential burnout. So success doesn't make us immune to burnout. We always have to be aware and keep in check and keep taking care of ourselves, from the basic needs to the more advanced needs. in order to prevent burnout. It's really a journey, not a destination. That is why it's so difficult to come up with a story, because it's not about a destination that, oh, now we have learned the lessons. And no, it's something that we have to keep going, because in different phases in our lives and in our business is going to show up in different ways.
In summary, then, it really is about self-awareness.
Yes.
So finally, is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners?
If people are feeling burnout, overextended, there are ways of changing it. There is hope. And if you are in full burnout and things like, oh, I try gratitude, it doesn't work, give yourself a break. When you really are in full burnout, gravity laws doesn't apply to other people. Things are a little bit different. And there are people out there that specializes in helping people like you. There is light at the end of the tunnel and you can get help. And if you are just dipping your toes in burnout, feeling overextended, waking up tired, consider that your wake-up call. You can do something, because if you really want to make an impact out there in the world, give your all. You can do it in a strategical, intentional way, create more impact, but it has to be minus the overextension and the burnout.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. That's an excellent point to wrap up our talk today. So what's the best way for listeners to learn more about you and what you do?
The best way is my website, anamelikian.com, and Anna is A-N-A, Melikian is M-E-L-I-K-I-A-N.com. And of course, if they are listening to this podcast, first of all, follow this amazing podcast. And then if you have a moment, look for Mindset Zone, my own podcast. That is also a place to pause, increase your self-awareness, and decide what is the next thing that you like to experiment with.
This was such a fascinating conversation today, Anna. I just learned so much from you, and I truly appreciate your time with me on the show.
My pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. The best way to think of burnout is a red alert. Picture a TV show or movie, and a ship is on red alert. It's all hands on deck. That's what's going on with our bodies and minds when we hit burnout. All of our most important signals are telling us we need to make a significant change in what we're doing. To continue without regard for that is to face the very real danger of major illness, an accident, or other bad life event. And luckily, as Anna and I talked about, all is not hopeless. You can recover from burnout. And more importantly, you can learn to recognize its signs sooner. Using the tips and techniques we covered today, you can greatly expand your coping skills to manage challenges and stressors before they become overwhelming. And ultimately, you can develop more honesty with yourself when your choices are leading to burnout, and learn to make different choices to change course. I'm Dr. Irena O'Brien, and you've been listening to Neuroscience of Coaching. You can find out more about me at neuroscienceschool.com. Neuroscience of Coaching is a part of the Mirasee FM podcast network, which also includes such shows as Just Between Coaches and To Lead Is Human. This episode was produced by Andrew Chapman. Danny Inney is our executive producer, and Marvin Del Rosario is our audio editor. To make sure you don't miss great episodes coming up on Neuroscience of Coaching, please follow us on Mirasee FM's YouTube channel or your favorite podcast player. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a comment or a starred review. It's the best way to help us get these ideas out there to more people. Thanks, and we hope you'll join us next time.